Hi, I'm Val Semix. I've worked on Conan, Lobo, and the Demon, and you're listening to 11 O'Clock Comics.
Hello folks, welcome to 11 O'Clock Comics. It's already sounding way different. This is episode 940.
So weird.
It is super weird. We lost one, regained another, and I am David A. Price.
It's true, and I'm back and better than ever because I am Maxwell Jacob Friedman.
New international champion.
Yes, that's right.
Spoilers for a week-old show. If you couldn't tell, Vince B is out on assignment in the motherland.
Yeah, the motherland's pretty big. 60 years young, and finally getting to see where he's from. That's great.
He's aged like a nice wine, so yeah, might as well go back to some olive oil. And it's so yeah. This might sound a little weird, but we're still gonna bring you some fun. I hope, knock on wood. We got a couple things queued up, but yeah. So we're this episode, of course, as every other, is brought to you by CheapGraphicNovels.com. I glanced at the this week's release email, and there were a couple things on there like the Tim Drake Robin compendium that looks really neat because I was buying those off the shelf when they were coming out and off the stand, and that had some great Tom Grummett art. But yeah, there's always a ton of things to look for and pick up at CGN. And if you do place an order, when you place your order, next time you do, let Max know 11 O'Clock Comics sent you, and you will get free shipping on your next order. It's a really great deal. Can't be beat. The prices are already fantastic to begin with. The free shipping is just a nice little topping. But there's a ton of things you'll be able to find there. And I added a couple of things to the wish list last weekend that I plan on picking up, or at least ordering fairly soon. I use the site a lot for my pre-orders to see what's coming out, and the pre-ordering is fantastic because you just go ahead, place your pre-order, pay for it now. You ain't got to worry about it because I know when we do DCBS or if you pre-order your books or you're on a pull list at the shop, you know it's coming out in the next 2 months, but you never really know. Sometimes the collections, we're looking at collections that aren't going to be out till like January. So it's nice to know, pre-order it now. Whenever the hell it shows up, it's like Christmas, bro. And it's just, it's a beautiful thing. Love the way Max packs everything.
Yep. Like
Amazon needs to take notes. It's just, it's a fantastic service. He puts out, he sells great product, and he's just an all-around fantastic dude. So this week with San Diego Comic-Con, I'm sure you're going to hear some news and a whole lot of fun from the convention. So you might want to just jot a few things down to keep an eye out for once they hit CheapGraphicNovels.com and throw them in your basket.
It's facts. A couple things. One, I got back from Florida and had a stack of boxes. It was like Christmas in July.
I saw that picture.
And the biggest box by far was from CheapGraphicNovels.com because our boy had a kick-ass Omnibus sale a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I couldn't resist. Even though I swore I wasn't going to keep buying Omnibus, I instead ended up ordering a bunch that I'd not ordered in the first place. But I received 6 Omnibus from them this week, and to your point, they were packaged wonderfully. Each one, like there were 2 boxes, but the one box was like a big old box. You open it up, inside were 2 smaller boxes, packed each tightly with 2 Omniboo, and then each of those boxes was individually wrapped and taped, and then those boxes were put into the big box with all kinds of extra padding and insulation. So there was no way these books were getting dinged, dented, nicked, nothing. So I already have about 87 years of unread material in this house. I just added about another year because I got the 4th volume of the Captain America Omniboo, which is I just had the first 3, and for some reason hadn't ordered the 4th. I got the Peter David Hulk Volume 4 and 5 because I had bought 1, 2, and 3 and had not bought the 4th or 5th. I bought the Dr. Aphra Omniboo, Star Wars. I bought the Star Wars Legends of the New Republic, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, runs of Star Wars comics ever. And last but not least, I bought the X-23 Omniboo with my girl Laura Kinney. So yeah, it was quite the hefty haul, and wifey was like giving me the mad side eye.
Yep.
Really, she's like, really.
Where were the Tolkien books from?
Oh yeah, I got the Tolkien books from Amazon during Prime Day.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, it got to for those who don't know what Daph's talking about. I got I'm sure I at some point in my life owned the physical copies of the Tolkien books. It's been a while though. And so Amazon on Prime Day had some beautiful hardcover illustrated versions of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So I got those. I also received in my Christmas in July a Omniboo from DCBS, which was, I guess I pre-ordered at some point Captain America, the Grunwald era, which of course you know is one of my all-time favorite runs with the Serpent Society. I received the College Football 25, the hot video game of the moment. Haven't played it yet, but I look forward to hopefully giving it a little whirl this weekend. And then I also got 3 new G.I. Joe classified figures because, of course, I need more unopened toys sitting in my pocket. So I have a sickness. It's no doubt about it. But yeah, so good stuff. Also, before we jump into this any further, we need to send a huge happy birthday to our boo, Mr. Tony Fleece, the 4th chair.
Absolutely.
He turns 45 today as we're recording, so most of you listening, you'll have to send him belated if you didn't wish him a happy birthday on Wednesday. But he's busy doing the San Diego Comic-Con schlep. I pinged him this morning, a little birthday tidings, and said, "Man, and on top of it being your birthday, you got 3 new books on the shelves on the same day." And he corrected me and said, "Actually, it's 4." And I'm like, "Oh, my bad," because I always forget about Army of Darkness.
Yes,
the count. But no, so dude's got 4 books on the shelves on the same day as his birthday. That's pretty crazy.
Birthday,
yeah.
And his schedule is packed this weekend. It's pretty much nonstop. I saw a video where he posted the schedule for the signings and the panels and Image here and Dynamite here, and it's insane.
Respect.
Yeah. But you are not Maxwell Jacob Freeman MJF. You are Jason Wood, and we are ready to get started. Now it's not a theme, but you had a wonderful idea, and I don't know if you wanted to just shotgun them or do 1 or 2 and then talk about a book.
Exactly. I think that's
okay.
What we should intersperse them.
Awesome.
I just said that Dap and I were doing a little pre-production meeting. As most of you listening know, it is very rare when it's just Dap and I. In fact, this is probably only maybe like the 3rd time ever.
Yes.
Exceedingly rare. So we thought, like, what could we do? Generally, my mind goes to what are things, either what guests can we have on, or what can we talk about that Vince would want to bludgeon himself if he was here. So it's like, but instead of that, because we decided not to have a guest this week. I thought, I'm like, we've been friends for nearly 2 decades now. I feel like I know a ton about you, obviously, and I'm sure you do the same with me. But I'm like, maybe there are things that, like, just because of the vagaries of life, I don't necessarily know about you that I always wanted to know. So I thought, how fun would it be? Our audience seems to eat up when we talk personal and shenanigans. So I thought, let's each have a couple questions about stuff we want to ask our boo that we don't think we've ever asked before, or if we did know the answer, we forgot the answer. So that's the mini theme of the evening that we'll intersperse in between comic talk. So I'm gonna hit you with the first one. I'm gonna keep it light and easy. Obviously, we have shared many a compliment to beautiful ladies over the years, women we find attractive and the like. But I realized that I don't really know if we've ever talked about who your like favorite famous women are, like who you find like the sexiest women alive, like the proverbial, like if Renee gave you a list,
the hall pass,
the list, the hall pass list, who would be on it? And I was like, I don't think I know. Like I might have some guesses, but I can't remember Dap ever telling me like, oh, that's my girl, that's my number one. Like I don't. So who would be your hall pass?
We're keeping it not adult film stars, right? So
hey, hall pass is a hall pass.
That's true. Well, we'll also keep it to celebrities who have worked during the age of color movies.
Yes, yeah.
So shout out to Cliff. But yeah. Oh well. Okay. All right. Oh man.
If you're dead, there can't be a hall pass.
That is true. You're right.
And we don't get
that.
Like
yeah. That. Yeah. No, you're 100% right there. Oh wow. Yeah. I don't. It's weird.
Like, yeah, you don't really have like hero worship in that way, do you?
No, I kind of don't.
It's crazy.
Shit. I'm glad we didn't have. Well, not maybe for the listeners, but I'm glad I didn't have. I'm glad we didn't throw the questions out so we could have padded answers. But yeah, holy hell, there's I don't want to. There's the obvious ones. Miranda Bachman,
my man. There you go.
He's on, of course.
Put over.
You've got. There were, and of course, I mean, we grew up in a time when we've seen actresses age, and some obviously age gracefully and beautifully, and then some beauty's in the eye to behold, but some kind of go in another direction, and you kind of just you not so much want to be with them as much give them a sandwich. There's oh crap! I just. Give me yours. Let's hear yours.
Oh, Scarlett Johansson obviously has been on my list pretty much since you've known me.
Zoe Kravitz is on mine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I was gonna say she's not on my list, but she's very attractive. Scarlett Johansson. Cindy Crawford's like my all-timer. Now she is getting up there in age because we're getting old, but she's still absolutely gorgeous, so she's on the list. Miranda Bachman is absolutely on my list. Carla Gugino is on my list.
Yes. Nice.
Those are the ones that I generally like roll off the tongue. Then there was a rotating one, sort of the flavor du jour. But yeah, those are the ones that I found the most fetching in my adult life.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Rachel McAdams.
Really? See, I did not know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah, she's cute as a button.
She really is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely some. You know what? As I'll probably just not necessarily tonight, but as they come up, I will definitely ping you.
Nice.
And let you know so we can add it to the list. That's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, mine really aren't that skew that personal or only because the conversations we do have, I think certain things, there are things that I do know about you in that respect. I'm not that I'm some darkly kept secret, but yeah, there's definitely some things I don't always willingly spew out there. But I mean, I had since you, and this was actually it's funny though, this wasn't timed this way, but my first question, being a comic book podcast, I did want to ask, since you have moved away singles for the most part, and you buying omnibus and absolutes. Is your intention to eventually read them, as we all say we do, or do you like that format mostly for the archival or the historical aspect of that format?
Yeah, it's the latter. I mean, I think at some point I bought them thinking it'll be great to revisit the stuff, and even if I own the issues, it would be easier than pulling out the issues from the long boxes and rereading them. But at this point, it's like a sickness. It feels good to have them, and I like that they're all the same trade dress and they look great on the shelves. And it's nice to know that I do possess the physical, official record archive of Marvel, which I do like take some psychic pleasure in. But generally speaking, I mean, of the hundreds of omnibu I own, many are still in shrink wrap, and even with on occasion where we've chosen to discuss something on the show that would be found in one of the many omnibu I own, I will often, my first choice will be to see if I can get it digitally, either on the Marvel app or if we have it from some kind of humble bundle, or if I have. So I will always default to not reading it in omnibus form. So yeah, I would say I don't really think I have any intention of consciously reading most of the omnibu, but I do love the idea that if I ever get the inkling or yearning to read any of the subjects, I do have them at my disposal. And I will say that it does differ. Like, for some reason, the Marvel Omnibus, and we've talked about this on the show, like, the form factor generally is not great for reading because it's so thick, and you worry about the spine breaking and keeping the spine open while you're trying to read. There are exceptions, like the ROM was a pretty, like when they're smaller sized omnibu, that's actually pretty great, I think, like where they're just over like big hardcovers. Those are pretty fun and easy to read. But like, it's definitely a Marvel centric thing because I was about to make an unintended pun. I was going to say with DC, I adore the Absolute editions. Which I think is a wonderful format because it's oversized and very readable generally. They usually limit those to no more than 12 issues. And I have read every Absolute that I own, and I own most of the Absolutes that have ever been made. So I definitely love reading them in that form, and certainly things like the library editions that Dark Horse has done for things like Hellboy and some of the Lemire stuff, like I've read all those, so I do like archival reading generally, just not Marvel Omnibu because they're too damn thick. And I guess that's true of like the DC Omnibu. I know they make those now too, or the compendiums. I don't buy many of those because I'm not as much of a DC nostalgia person, but those look kind of unwieldy too to me. So yeah, I guess I don't love the omnibus format, but psychically I love that that's a format I can get like all the stuff in physical form.
Yeah, I'm pretty much at the time when we were growing up buying comics, it was all about that first printing. Like any comic worth anything, it's first printing. Once once you get a second or third printing, it's not worth as much as if we ever were going to sell them, but you just know that okay, it's a reprint. And for the longest time, because we grew up reading comics where they weren't necessarily rushed out to be collected, so it took a long time for me to just kind of shake that feeling that whether it's a high-end deluxe edition, an omnibus, an absolute, it's still a reprint, and it took a while for me to just get over the fact that it's a reprint, but it's designed to be put on a shelf. And I do look at them as as some sort of archived edition more, especially for the older stuff, especially for the ROMs or the Kirby Caps, things like that. Like, I mean, the Morrison X-Men, maybe not so much. It might be easier to get all those issues in that format, but it's not like it's been around at the time when it was published. It was only out. The original run was a few years old, so it wasn't like it was impossible to get those in the back issue bins or off the wall. So, but no, yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. I view them as just they're designed to go on a shelf. It's library editions more or less, and that's what they're designed to do. It if I want to read them or flip through them, read a couple of issues, stroll down memory lane or whatever, they're there. The ability is there. But yeah, I don't view them the same way I would view a trade of House of M.
For sure.
Yeah.
Respect. All right, so let's talk comics. I read a lot of comics.
I bet you did some reading on vacation.
A lot of comics, man. My list is plentiful. It's Wumba. But I have to say, because I knew it was going to be just me and you tonight, I caught up on your boy Clark Kent, your boy Kal-El.
Uh-huh.
I read Superman 5 through 16.
Damn.
Superman House of Brianiac Special number 1, and Action Comics numbers 1064 through 1066. Of course, I read those non-Superman issues specifically because they are the House of Brianiac event,
right?
The event that happened. I mean, you have talked about many of these issues sort of in real time. Obviously, this is your stilo, this is your dude, this is your stuff. I will say that it was really interesting. Like the Superman run. Like I remember the first few issues when of this run, which I had read when they were coming out, and I liked them a lot. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool conceit, right? Like with Lex being an ally of Superman, being in prison and working with him. Like I thought, oh, this is cool. This is interesting. This is a unique take. And it was that. I will say that as the Lex Luthor Revenge Squad began building out, it didn't. I could like take it or leave it. I mean, it was good. I didn't mind it, but it wasn't like I wasn't pulled in like with a tractor beam, thinking, okay, this is just all time classic comics. It just felt like a well done, well executed Superman story. And it was a pretty long one, right? It was what, like 10, 11, 12 issues, something like that. But I did enjoy it. I thought that the art was a little too varied in the sense that, they're all very good artists, but Campbell and Dragata and then Baldeón is very different styles, right? Like very, very different styles. And it was weird to me to have all those guys contribute to the same basically mega arc. Because in a vacuum, I like each of their styles quite a bit, but I think having them all together telling the same story felt a little weird to me. But where I liked it but could have taken or leaving it, kind of, maybe let's call it like a B+ superhero kind of thing. I think once we hit the House of Brainiac stuff in earnest, that felt great. That felt like a classic little mini event that I was hooked in. It felt significant. It was jam-packed, action-packed. It was like just nonstop, just like putting on the Raid. Garrett was the Raid, and like you can't even catch your breath because it's just people fighting from start to finish. I really enjoyed the Brainiac event. I thought it was tight and cohesive, and for how many different characters they had involved, it largely made sense. Almost everybody, as I think back, got a hero moment, to make it worthwhile. It wasn't like they were just superfluously in there for the sake of being in there. They all kind of seemed like they had a purpose for the give or take, and also I appreciated it because it definitely helped fill in the blanks for me with Absolute Power, which I jumped in cold sort of reading and didn't really. I mean, I was able to piece together who the Triumvirate were, but I didn't know much about this Brainiac Queen and Nightfall before this. So I obviously the Brainiac event is all about her formation, her creation. So that filled in those blanks. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I can see why you're excited. I mean, Superman seems to be in good hands right now. And I think that Brainiac event will be really terrific as a collected edition. I saw the trade was listed. I won't buy a trade of it, but if they do go the hardcover, I will definitely put that on the shelf because I thought that was a lot of fun.
It really was. I finished I read the Green Lantern backups that tied in to House of Brainiac, and I finished I read the third issue of the Power Girl tie-in, and I'm glad they just limited it to those two series. The Power Girls were full-on issues. It was basically her fighting and then teaming up with Crush, aka Libel's daughter, and fighting a bunch of Zazarians, and then the backup in the Green Lantern book was Guy basically acting like a bounty hunter going after Lobo, and he captures a guy who he thinks is Lobo, isn't, and Guy and this guy also end up getting trapped by Brainiac and put in a bottled city. So they were neat, but they weren't really they didn't need to be read in conjunction with the entirety of the event. And because the Power Girl, I mean, that just basically that was all in Metropolis in this one neighborhood. So it's not like we even saw her even fighting Brainiac or helping out Cal and the family. But the event itself was, I mean, it was fantastic, and seeing and it can go in a different direction. Either Williamson can pick it up later on, or another writer can take the seeds. But the event and the resolution and the fallout it went some things not that I expected, but I could see happening. But then they pulled a few other things off in the last issue, the last chapter of the story, and I didn't see coming from a million miles away. And I'm optimistic. I'm excited. I'm really interested to see where they go from here. And the most recent issue of Superman, he doesn't even really get a break. Doesn't get a breather to catch up from all that, because now we have the absolute power and those tie-ins, and that's going to be entertaining because he'll be able to team up with Satana. But it's been wild, and it's only been 15 issues, and like you said, I mean, we've had a few different artists over the course of these 15 issues, and when the series started, and then, like you said, the Revenge Squad, and then the House of Brainiac. So it's been pretty hot and heavy, almost from the rebirth, or whatever the hell it was called, the dawn of DC, until now. So I'm and the art has, even though, like you said, not every artist has been complementary to the other based on their styles, but Williamson has still had some slamming artists working
all
with him.
Quality artists. I don't mean to say the art's been it's very different styles. I mean, for sure. Also, I have to, like, I wasn't imagining that Chained was Nicolas Cage, right? Like, that was intentional. Yeah.
See, now I saw the Chained as dude from Generation X. The hell is it? Not Chamber. He reminds me of Chamber for some reason.
Okay. There
Between
you go.
the hair and the just the face, and the way Hollow draws characters, is that slender, really kind of. So yeah, but no, I could see I could definitely see a skinny Nicolas Cage.
Who the fuck are the two kids though, dude? I wasn't clear on that. They're from the Warworld event. They when they were chained up on Warworld when Superman took the authority and went to go face Mongol. They are Kryptonian to a degree, and so Superman basically he basically kids are raising them.
Yep, he brought them home, and it's like, that now we've got, and I guess
got a lot of damn kids, dude.
They really do. I mean, they've got I mean, they're just. And I mean, only one of them is theirs, but like, still, it's a foster family and a half. But yeah, and I get it. It gives Clark and Lois an opportunity to at least see raise someone without missing like 10 years of their life, so it fills in that gap unless they ever decide to reverse it. But that is who they are, and they don't, and surprisingly, neither one really annoys me. I mean, they kind of, when they were introduced and their attitude towards Superman, and because of all they knew growing up, and their just the stubbornness, and here's a stranger, and we know Superman, so we know he's not trying to do anything wrong, but they don't, and of course it's just, so it was the whole, it was the butting heads and things like that, but they've definitely, I don't want to say matured, but they've adapted pretty well, and they love Bibbo, and yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, I'm glad they are there, and I'm glad that we've got a smattering of a Superman family now.
The interesting thing, like reading this, and then I'm current on Green Arrow, the current run. I'm enjoying that. It's so readily apparent, no matter where we are, what generation we're talking about, what iteration, what reboot. Like, to me, the biggest difference between DC and Marvel will always be DC's embracing of the family and Marvel's not being interested in that. Like, and I'm not, people are like, I'm not saying Marvel doesn't have family related stories, but I'm saying like super families, right? Because again, like, this whole story was about Superman's extended family, right? And it's not just blood family, right? It's like all of his kids, his cousin, the
Superman
Chinese,
of China, yep.
Superman of China, like just everybody that's like, but they're together, they have similar powers, they have unity in many ways, they fight for a common purpose. Obviously, there's the Flash, certainly the Batman families. I mean, you can't escape that. Green Arrow, though, right now, like, his whole extended family's involved in the adventures, at least was until Absolute Power, right? They were all traveling together and fighting together. It's just so commonplace. And even with the Brainiac story, right? There was the House Brainiac was the name of the book, and then you had the Zarnians, and it's such a common trope in DC, and it's like integral to so many characters' lore, and it just feels right. Like, it doesn't feel weird. There's a bunch of, for lack of a better term, like clones or doppelgangers of these iconic characters. They just kind of fit in. Whereas with Marvel, it just doesn't. It's really so rare. I mean, yes, there are legacy characters, but it's rare, if ever, that they're like involved in stories together, right? And that they're hanging out together. It just doesn't happen. And when it does, it feels very unique because it's so rare. Whereas with DC, you pretty much expect it. Like, it's like that's just part of the very nature, the ethos of it. And to me, like, that's the number one. If I was making a list of all the ways that Marvel and DC are classically different from one another, that would be number one for me, is the focus on family and legacy, like the embracing of it.
Yeah,
really,
yeah. Because with Marvel, they would just, the teams, the groups are the families. The X-Men are a family, but it's
absolutely,
not. But
that's
absolutely,
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like even like, I mean, like, sure, there have been different Captain Americas, but they're not family, and usually one is the character while the other's not around, right? Same thing with like Spider-Man. Like, yes, Miles and Peter exist now together, but for the most part, like, they're in their own books, right?
Yep.
And they don't really interact except for every now and then they do a crossover. Like, there's, you're not, like, Spider-Man probably is the one that you could make the case these days is like that, because they do lots and lots of mini events across the Spider books where they're all together in the Spideyverse and stuff. So maybe Spider-Man's kind of evolving into that after certainly decades of not being like that. But that's really the only one, right? I mean, that is really, like you said, it's much more team focused and the friendships that those teams have than it is anything else. So
I think it stems from, which is weird because of Superman. He never really had one, but Batman's got a sidekick. Ollie has a sidekick. Barry pretty much once Wally came on the scene. So it was all.
Well,
I mean, so it's
sidekick out, and they're like, okay, it's like soap operas. Like, all right, well then we need to give him another young sidekick or ward or child or for sure. I think it's cool. Like, it's one of the charming things about DC, and it's, you can't go back in time. So I don't know how I would feel about like DC versus Marvel if I read them both with the regularity that many of you did growing up. Like, I just don't. It's DC still, for good or for bad, can feel new to me, which is just something that's pretty much impossible for Marvel to do these days for me. So, but like I said, it was cool, and I like little things, which again may not mean much to a regular reader like y'all, but like I love that Jimmy Olsen's in love with Silver Banshee. Like,
yeah,
it tickles me for no reason. I'm like, oh, that's cool. You go, Jimmy.
That's right.
Get you some. Like it's like this stuff pleases me.
It is great. I like it a lot. Obviously,
Lady in the Streets.
See, you also read the second issue of Destro, right?
I did. Yeah.
That was. I mean, I enjoyed the first. We all
Yeah.
talked about the first issue. We dug it. I was a little surprised at how kind of quickly things moved with the second issue. And I loved the interplay, the juxtaposition between whatever Destro was doing and then Tomax and Xamot. And almost at the same time attacking each other. It was... the art is still fantastic. This, of course, Dan Waters is writer, Andrei Bressan on art, Adriano Lucas does the colors. But... when the toys were coming out, watching the cartoons, reading the comics back in the day, it was always Tomax and Xamot. And it's almost like they're going out of their way to say Xamot and Tomax in this book. It doesn't rattle around in my head right when I see it that way. But it was a great issue because they are really scorched earth between both, and there's a bit of a truce, but there's obviously still no trust, and this is it kind of it almost I really didn't know what to expect with this 5-issue miniseries, but I mean there's really no slow burn here. They're just absolutely at each other's throats, and whether it's Mars or Crimson, and it's don't trust anybody, obviously, but I'm just, and it is all about the arms deals and just, which I really wasn't, I guess, expecting, but that's what Destro is, so it absolutely makes sense. But yeah, and of course Destro gets the monologue, but it was a hell of an issue. I enjoyed the first, but I think the second issue kind of kicked it up a notch for me.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I like I said with the first issue, I thought it was if the quality of the rest of the mini matched the first issue, then I thought it was going to be my favorite of these Joe miniseries. That they've been I give Skybound a lot of credit. They have been exceedingly patient building to G.I. Joe proper. Right. I mean, they've been. By the time we get it's now been announced, but by the time we get the G.I. Joe #1 reboot that we all thought was coming, it'll be close to 2 years since they announced they had the license. So but I don't really feel like we've been gypped at all, because I think like these minis have all been very entertaining, and I love that they're giving us a concept of the motivations of all of these different characters in a way we never got before. Because, I mean, basically, obviously the comic and the cartoon were born out of the toy. So just like with Transformers, and so the backstory was whatever they created on the fly just to put on the back of boxes or whatever, and then they went from there, certainly. But I think it's really cool to see, like, well, yeah, I mean, Destro is a capitalist, and Tomax and Xamot are capitalists, and it would make sense that they'd be rivals, right? I mean, so because capitalism is a zero-sum game in many ways. But yeah, I agree. Bressan, to me, he's playing a little tighter with the line work, probably by design, in this than he did with Dark Ride. I know we all were fans of Dark Ride. I think I was probably more of a fan of Dark Ride as a idea than I was sometimes in practice as it went on. But I think, yeah, Bressan here so far through these 2 issues is just crushing it. I love it. I mean, it's a unique style, but it's very evocative in terms of like the model usage or the gear, to me, of the classic, and because of the nostalgic hold that Joe has for me as a kid, from my kid when I was a kid. I really appreciate that these characters look exactly like I expect them to look if I were to, dust off the toys or whatever. So yeah, just it's great stuff, and I'm really, really probably unreasonably excited for the launch of the Joe Proper series. Skybound hasn't done me any wrongs yet. I also am current on Transformers and Void Rivals, and I don't think there's a bad book in the bunch. I realize, of course, everybody's opinions may vary there, or some may be floating people's boats more than others, but I just think objectively, if you're talking about writing, production values, and certainly the art, I just don't think there's a stinker yet. I think they've all been great. So that is all you can ask for when you're talking about licensed properties, because we have all, whether it's Star Wars or Rick and Morty or Turtles or Joe and Transformers, or pick your licensed topic, we have all lived through a lot of really janky versions of these characters in comic form, hoping that we stumble across a nice run. So hat tip to Skybound for kicking ass and taking names so far. And I haven't read yet, so it's not on the list, but we got the first issue of the new Turtles today. I don't know if you took a gander. I haven't looked at it yet, so I don't know. But I know that is a highly anticipated launch, and also certainly one that I think has a lot of people nervous, because many of you really adored the run that just wrapped up. It's multi-year, and so naturally you always wonder, like, how do you match something that's great? Chances are it's not going to be as great, but I have to say this is the year of the Jason Aaron Renaissance, man. He's having fun. He's got his passion back. He's writing tons of different stories across different companies and different genres, and I think he's doing an awesome job with every one of them. So I have high hopes for the Turtles. I'm going to give it a try, but I know you and Vince and a lot of folks on the Slack and whatnot have pretty strong emotional appreciation for the run that just ended. So I understand it'll be probably a heavier lift for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, I guess IDW is hoping that having Jason Aaron on the reboot, and Joel Jones on art, it should. It's not going to erase what Sophie and everybody did before then, but at least they're not. It's not a couple scrubs kicking off a new series, so it should be something. Vince and I weren't super keen on the prologue from the Alpha issue, but
right.
I'll definitely be giving the first issue a shot, and we'll see where it goes. So I'm slightly optimistic because the creators have the bona fides, but I also felt like there really wasn't anything wrong with what came before. So it's
sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Hopefully I'll have it. Well, if not for next week, I should try to have it read by the time Vince comes back. See if as long as he's read it. But yeah, we'll see. Oh man.
Before we move on from Jason Aaron, since we did just bring him up, I did want to quickly mention 30 seconds in and out.
Yes.
The first issue of Namor #1, by Jason Aaron, with art by Paul Davidson and Alice Linz, and colors by a new to me color artist, Niraj Menon. But I wouldn't say I'm particularly beholden to Namor as a character, but I certainly do view him as one of the the key Marvel characters given his history and frequent membership on the Avengers and stuff, and obviously he's been more associated with the mutants in the last 10-15 years as well. I really had no expectations for this, because the last few Namor event or minis or what have you haven't been that hot, and this is new ongoing. But I got to tell you, this gets back to what I was saying with Jason Aaron being back. I thought this was an absolute blast, and I thought that Paul Davidson and Alex Linz art was just incredible. I think it looks beautiful. The issue flashes back to when Namor was first becoming King of Atlantis, back as I'd say the way he's drawn in this, he's probably like in his mid to late teens in this version. But then and then flashes back to present time where he's currently imprisoned at a superpowered prison for the events that when he you may remember a year or two ago he went a little ham on the the flat earthers or the landlubbers. And anyway, so it picks up there, and him kind of like going back, and he's been in the premises. He's reluctant to go back to the ocean and try and lay claim to Atlantis and the sea. But these events that take place in this first issue kind of lead him to a pivotal go or no go decision on that front. You got Stingray in here, which you gotta always love a good Stingray appearance. You got the Dwellers of the Deep, which was Namor's superpower team that he created of Atlantean superpowered people to fight against the Avengers a few years ago. So just a blast, and the art was awesome. So a surprising 2 thumbs up for the relaunch or the new Namor book, believe it or not.
I had to have missed it when it was in previews, because when I saw the cover, I wasn't sure at first if it was a collection of older Namor stories.
Know.
The cover really didn't
right? Yeah.
didn't really belay that, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, I didn't know we were getting a new Namor series, or if it was a one shot, or if it was a miniseries. So I don't, with everything going on between Blood Hunt and the X-Men relaunch, I didn't know where a Namor book fit in the grand scheme of things. But okay.
Yes, sir. Jason Aaron getting it.
All right. I don't know if Caleb even talked about it yet, so I got to find out.
I know. I hope he enjoyed it, because I'm going to feel bad if he hates it, because I thought it was great.
All right.
Are you ready for another question?
Let's do it.
Okay. I mean, we talk about, you and especially offline, we talk about media a lot, like TV, movies, especially with our NC boys and the Slack we got. We definitely talk about non-comics a lot. So like, I know your vibes, I know what you're into, in real time. I know what shows you're watching, what movies you're liking. But it dawned on me that like, we have had very few, if any, conversations over our friendship about prose. So it had me wondering, like, are you a fan of reading prose? Do you do it often now? If not, like, because I don't read anywhere near as much prose as I used to, because of the show in part. But were you ever like a big prose reader? And with that, like, I mean, you know what my favorite books are. I talk about them all the time. My favorite novels. I've made Patreon posts about them. But like, I have no idea if you have like favorite books or novels that would be like on your all-time list or not. So where do you stand with the prose, Dap?
I used to be a very voracious prose reader. I still buy some from time to time. I'll go to Bruised Apple and I'll find something that catches my eye, and I've got a stack of unread paperbacks and also a shitload of old pocket Star Trek books from the when Ray hooked me up with that seller of his. So I used to love reading novels, and my favorites would be I was real big on Stephen King for a good while. I think most of us were at a certain age. Like my favorite is when I was in Tarrytown, there was a bookstore, and that was when I picked up Cycle the Werewolf, and it had the Bernie Wrightson illustrations inside. It was a beautiful edition, which of course becomes the movie Silver Bullet. But I read the hell out of that. But my absolute favorite King novel is Misery, and then a lot of it was the. I haven't gotten into Dark Tower yet, but I mean, it was Misery, there was Thinner, there was I went back and read Cujo, I read some of his Bachman books, but yeah, it was.
I haven't mentioned my favorite though, The Stand,
because I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
I know, but I finally started. I was way too young to read it at the time, but I was flying down somewhere, probably to my grandparents in Florida, and I started it, and I was just like, I tried reading it before then, and I finally, since I'm trapped on a plane now, that's when I started it, and I couldn't put it down. So I finally read it, and I mean, this is a bunch of years ago, but so I finally read that. But yeah, I haven't read The Stand. I think the last book I started of his that I I hadn't finished was Cell, and that started freaking me out. So I was just like, I gotta put this down for a little bit. But yeah, there's way more now King books that I haven't read that's been out since then. But he was a favorite. Piers Anthony was a favorite of mine. A lot of the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah,
I before I knew who he was, or the type of person he is, I did read Ender's Game, and I did enjoy it. I think most of us do. Anybody who would read it now would. I mean, based on that story, with whatever goes on within those covers, people should be able to enjoy that story. As long as you can separate the art from the artist, there's no problem there. But yeah, it was it's the same thing with the Tolkien stuff. I have a really nice larger paperback copy of Lord of the Rings, but I also have an old, like from the 50s or 60s paperback of The Hobbit around here somewhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was there weren't I wasn't really I even tried getting into Neil Stephenson. I enjoy William Gibson more than I do Stevenson for some reason. I would always be aware, because taking the bus, the public transportation to school, I'd walk through the mall. The Cross County Shopping Center was an outdoor mall, and there was a Walden book, so I'd always go in there and I'd check out what was out, what was new, and seeing what other people were reading. We had the Scholastic Book Fair, of course. So I mean, I was always aware of what was the new hotness, but there were some things that I was trying to get caught up in the hype and just go along with the crowd, or it just wasn't clicking for whatever reason, or I just wasn't in the mood. But and eventually the books kind of gave away to all the computer crap, and then just really got more into the comics, mostly for just timing of it all. But yeah, there were and then there are the comic history books as well, like The Men of Tomorrow or Eisner Miller, things like that, which I wouldn't, they're obviously not like fictional prose books, but yeah, there were a few things here and there. I do have a nice one of the nicer paperback versions of I have a Douglas Adams collection, and then I would, for whatever reason, I would glom onto the gimmicky or the slightly the books that came out because they were just trying. So I have some books on psychology, or the whole red pill, blue pill kind of aspect from the Matrix, where they kind of like break things down and get into the meta aspects of it. But of course, I bought those because they were somehow, someone was just cashing in on the whole Matrix name, just to see what other things I could pick up or pick out from those movies that would just kind of enhance my pleasure of them. But
yeah,
and then I just realized I was buying books because for stupid reasons, and that kind of also, I think, killed the fun of it for me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I am definitely not allergic to prose. I wish I had time to not just sit down and read some of the things that I've had for years, or even some of the newer things. But yeah, I am not a sadly I'm not as voracious as I used to be, but
I think that's true of all of us. I was thinking about that because Beth just like read an entire book today in like one sitting, and I'm like, man,
I wish.
I'm like, man, I just think back how I used to read so many books, and I read very few now, just a couple a year, and it's like, and I miss it actually. It's like I'm like, man, I really do. It's just a thing of like, to me, when I think reading now, especially because not just because of the show, but because I just have so damn much of it, it's like comics is always my first go-to. Because again, I have decades to read in the house already. It's like, all right. So it's interesting that you bring up Stephen King though, because as you were bringing up, I was scrolling through his bibliography, and it's crazy. Like I was pretty much a appointment viewing reader of his for like a huge chunk of his career, and then I can pinpoint. Like I'm scrolling. I read every single one of his books through hold on, I'm still scrolling through Cell.
Okay.
And then because that was 2006, I did read Lizzie's Story, which also came out. I did not read that, which came out in 2006. I did not read Blaze, which is 2007. That was a Bachman book. I did not read Duma Key, which came out in 2008. Then I did read Under the Dome, which came out in 2009. So for some reason, I read everything he'd ever done until Cell, skipped 4 books, and then read Under the Dome. But then everything he's written since I've not read. 11/12/63, Joyland, Dr. Sleep, Mr. Mercedes, Revival, End of Watch, Gwendy's Button Box, Sleeping Beauties, The Outsider, Elevation, Institute, Later, Billy Summers, Gwendy's Final Task, Fairy Tale, and Holly. I've read none of those. So we're talking like upwards of like 20 of his novels that I have never read, and then the 35 or 40 before that I read every single one. So it's pretty weird. I made like a pretty clean cut with him, but it was never intentional.
Right.
I think again it's no coincidence. 2009. I
wonder what happened there.
Yeah. So so there you go.
I did want to check out Under the Dome because I watched the first season of that show. So did you read the book because you wanted to read the book, or were you familiar with the show?
No, I was I read the book. No, I read the book just because, like I said, I remember I if you would have asked me before looking at the list, I would have said, "Oh, I read up through Under the Dome without ever skipping a book." So I didn't, because I remember reading The Cell and then Under the Dome. I don't remember why or for what reason I didn't read Lizzie's Story, Blaze, or Duma Key. And then, like I said, from there, the next book was in 2011, and by then I was busy with kids and this show and all that stuff, so probably that's when I fell off. But but I guess, hey, it means I have a lot of Stephen King that I can jump back into when I get the hankering, I guess.
Renee she had one of the first Kindles, and so she would read books constantly. Mosley or Dickie. They're just she always had a book in her hand, and then when we were trying to cut back on clutter, and both of us were trying to just focus on digital, she bought a bunch of books on Kindle, and and even so she loves reading as well, and I think what I want to try to do is see if I can kickstart that love again, and I might try it with N.K. Jemisin, just because she doesn't have a huge catalog, and hopefully it's something I can maybe keep up with as they come out.
Nice.
So this was this was a weird one because obviously because of this week, and I know we've always poo-pooed the idea for a bunch of years because we're never going to be grandfathered in, but also because of the timing of it, and it's a schlep. But I think we're old enough now where maybe we might be able to, especially with your kids older. Do you think it's time to maybe consider over the next couple of years to toy around with the idea of getting out to San Diego?
That's an interesting question. Especially born out of the awesome post by Anthony G.
Yes, absolutely.
He longtime friend of the show, Anthony G, posted in our Slack today about just a really, I mean, you can classify it no other way other than a love letter to San Diego.
Yeah.
A very eloquent, excited, detailed view of why, even though he goes every year, how incredibly exciting it is for him and how it jumpstarts his passion for the hobby every year in the midpoint and gets him really fired up for stuff to read, and it just made it seem like, oh man, we're missing out. Man, I would love it. I mean, it does seem ridiculous that given how long we've been at this, and that I guess it's fair to say we've attained some type of notoriety, whatever that may mean, and I know a lot of our West Coast friends and listeners and even people like Felix have always said, like, why the hell don't you come to San Diego? And the answer is because we have the benefit of being grandfathered in of sorts to New York and heroes, and it's obviously and geographically they're easier to get to, and it's like I know a lot of the people that implore us to come to San Diego, assume that we could get press badges and all that stuff. I'm not sure that that's true, right? Because
I'm not counting on that.
Yeah. And then the daunting thing, right, is just that as much as I'm a pretty organized person, it is difficult to plan 8 to 10 months in advance, or at least to remember to. And San Diego is definitely one of those things where you gotta get your tickets in your hotel or Airbnb and all that hooked up 8-9 months before the con. And that's totally doable. Like, if we planned it, like you said, if we're going to do it this year, then that's totally feasible. But I feel like it always just catches up to us, and we never do, because that's usually right around the time when New York's happening, and we're just thinking about other things. So I would love to, though, man. I would love to. First of all, San Diego, I don't know if you've been, is gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful places in the 48 continuous. So weather's perfect, fun town, not too big, kind of like a Charlotte, like not too big that you feel overwhelmed. But awesome restaurants, awesome bars, very, just a great scene. And so I would love for an excuse to go to San Diego. I have a bunch of friends out there from college. So I would be down for it. It's just like you said, we just got to kind of like circle the calendar one year and say we're doing San Diego next year, and just try and do it. Obviously for me, I've kind of downplayed it at times because why they do have an Artist Alley, it's very small, and it's certainly not viewed as an art-centric show. I think for a long time people wanted to be at San Diego for the news breaking and for the panels, and that's never been a big draw for me. But I think if we went with just the idea of it being like, let's just experience it and hang out with our West Coast friends and listeners that we never get to see, and just do it up, kind of like what we did with Emerald City, it could be a blast. I mean, we treat it like a vacation. So I'm definitely down for it, man. I mean, we just got to get off our asses and decide we're going to do it. Yeah.
And I know 10 years ago, whenever we were thinking about it, it was whether or not it'd be a whole family adventure, and that logistically could just be a nightmare. But I mean, if it's not just the three of us, or we bring our significant others, then that's a hell of a lot easier than, of course, bringing all the kids. But I haven't been out west since we left out west. So I mean, we used to always we lived in Yuma, Arizona, so we were close to California, and we would go to the San Diego Zoo quite often. We would always go to because their spring training games were in Arizona, and so we'd always go see the Padres play. I wouldn't mind heading back out there for any reason, and like you said, San Diego is beautiful, and even depending on how we could plan it out, we could probably head over to the Bay before we would head home and hang out with Ray. So yeah, I mean, there are possibilities. I think it's weirder now that we're older. It's probably easier for us to plan and prepare for than we would have even 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay, I like it. So now we just got to tell Vince, hey, we're going to. I read the first issue of I think I mentioned it last week briefly. Because I hadn't finished it before the show started. So the first issue of Nemesis Rogues Gallery, did you see that?
It's weird, dude. I didn't realize, this whole the Millerverse moving to Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Because he's putting out a ton of new shit.
Yes.
It's no buzz whatsoever, none. And it doesn't help that the Dark Horse solicits are little 1 inch classifieds now. It's crazy. So, long story short, no, I totally missed it. I did not even register that it was a thing.
It is definitely Nemesis. It takes place pretty much
after the big game.
Right after, but shortly after the big game, because our man is in a hospital bed, basically paralyzed from the neck down. But it's violent as hell, and it feels like Nemesis. It just doesn't necessarily look like Nemesis, because when you have someone like McNiven drawing a book, you know exactly how that looks. And then you had Pepe draw the character along with a bunch of other characters, and that's a very slick, streamlined look, and everybody's gorgeous and beautiful.
Yep.
This illustrated by Valerio Giangiordano is.
Dude, Miller's better at finding these Italian artists than Paolo was.
It's amazing. It's seriously. Hopefully, he treats them better. But you also have. But this is it's a very it's dirty and grittier, and it which again is fitting for the subject matter, especially for this particular issue. But it doesn't look like you would expect a Nemesis book to look like.
Okay.
But it's still a hell of a ride, and we even have a supporting character from the last miniseries appear. So it was neat, yeah, and you get a little bit more of a backstory with the organization that basically raised him or made him who he is. Mm-hmm. Turned it from Anderson to Nemesis, and speaking of sidekicks, that may play a part in this particular mini. So we'll see. But yeah, it was one of the Dark Horse previews I grabbed, and again, Dark Horse has a little watermark in the corner, which wasn't a problem here, like it is in Into the Undoing, which for some reason, the way that book is laid out, a lot of the word balloons or the captions are down in the lower right where that watermark is, so it's not always easy to read what the hell people are saying. But yeah, no, this was I mean, it's Nemesis. You'll read it, it'll feel like Old Home Week, but it just looks a little different. So when you do read it, I'm curious to see what you think of the art.
Yeah, I'm really I am low key fascinated. I would love to get Mark Miller on the show for lots of reasons, but I gotta know what is going on where these people are leaving Image for Dark Horse. Why do that? And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying I need to hear why. Because why would a guy like Miller and again, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Miller's got. I mean, I can think of 5 of his books now that have currently in solicits for that are coming out through Dark Horse, right? And yet, when he was leading up to the big game and all those minis were coming out right before the big game, it was event stuff we were talking about all the time. We read most of them. I think I read all of them. I gave Miller my 11 o'clocker because of it. Everything he did last year entertained the shit out of me, and I feel like I'm hearing no one talk about these at all, anticipating them, it's so weird to me. It feels like it was such a strange and poor decision to make the move, but I could be totally wrong. Maybe it's just a me thing, and everyone's laser focused on them, and they're going to have the same kind of sales and attention as the Image volumes did. And I hope that's true. But either way, I'm in on it all. This Nemesis book's the only one I didn't pre-order because I just somehow missed it. But I am in on all of them, and I don't see why they won't be entertaining AF, because Mark Miller always entertains me.
I wonder if it's a media issue. Maybe Dark Horse has an in better with they have a better track record maybe with. No,
but he's got the deal with Netflix though.
Right, but nothing's really. I know,
yeah.
But so I don't. And I mean, yeah, of course. Bendis is there now with his stuff, and which is fine. I mean, he's been pretty much with every publisher anyway. But it's you're not. Yeah, no, you have the same questions I do, and because I can't imagine that Dark Horse would give them a better deal.
That's what I want to know.
So,
it's so weird, right? Because again, Kent works with them, Lemire works with them, Tom's working with them now. So they must be really great to deal with. There must be things they do as good or better than Image. And I guess the one thing I do know, and I probably would be is that when you do an Image book, you're responsible for it all. You got to edit the book, you got to design the book, you got to market the book, right? And Dark Horse is a much more traditional publisher in that way. They have editors, they have designers, they have a distribution system, they have a PR team. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe sometimes they don't want to do all the heavy lifting. Maybe they it's probably super hard to do the heavy lifting on 4 or 5 Image books at once. but they do a few that way, and then they sprinkle some Boom and some Dark Horse in, and maybe it's a nicer life balance. Maybe, I don't know.
I can see that.
Yeah. Dude, did you see that I read 35 issues of a series, Dap?
I did see that. When I saw your list, I was like, are you out of your mind? And of all the books to read, I'm like, wait, so did he really read them, or did it just like? But yeah, I mean, yes. And obviously I've heard good things because this is McKay's run, right?
Yeah, I read all 35 issues of the latest version of Moon Knight. Yes, Moon Knight, the Fist of Khonshu. So the reason is mainly because MacKay is the top dog at Marvel these days. He's the new guy, the it guy, right? Doing the Avengers, right? Doing the event. He's the guy. And I feel like the two books that kind of got him to that spot as the guy were his Black Cat run and his Moon Knight run. And I had read neither. And I know a lot of our friends are big fans of this Moon Knight run. And we like to kind of poke fun at Moon Knight and stuff and say he's like, Marvel's Batman. But honestly, I thought, I like MacKay, let me see what's doing here. And so I just jumped in and plowed through them all. First off, I was able to read 35 issues very quickly. You got into a flow, just kind of like banged them out. This is not deep stuff, okay? So this isn't like each issue is a think piece and you have to dissect it. That's not what this is about. I would say the TLDR of all this is that it was a very solid superhero run. There are choices made that I dug. For example, we meet a new character, Hunter's Moon, who's the other Fist of Khonshu. I just love the idea that there'd be two Fists of Khonshu. Like, why wouldn't there be? There's two. Yeah. That makes sense, so it didn't feel forced. I think they really do a nice job of fleshing both the character of Hunter's Moon out and the alter ego out. It's a nice yin-yang with Mark Spector. He views Mark with a side eye. Thinks he's pretty sus, but he does work with him, and they're both heroes, if you will, so they're more allies than not, but it's not like they're not besties, Tiger is up in there. I've always been a fan of any West Coast Avenger making a modern day appearance. That's cool, and plus she's sexy AF. There are, as you might imagine, in 35 issues, there's a handful of different pencilers, but for the most part, like for the vast majority, I didn't count, but I'd say at least 25 to 28 of the 35 issues are drawn by Alessandro Cappuccio. I think his style is terrific. He's very much in the vein of like a Deladera style, like very thin lines, but very detailed. Good stuff, really good, solid art, and I think the fact that he does most of the issues is a big plus because it does make the book feel very cohesive. But I thought the fill-in artists were all quite good too. There was no like visual dogs where I'm like, oof, this is a rough fill-in issue. I thought everything was pretty much spot on visually. The only nit I would say, well, there's two nits. One, and again, this is part my fault for reading 35 issues at one time. It felt very repetitive at times, especially the narrative. I understand a big part of Mark Spector's character is that he is DID, what we used to call multiple personality disorder. That is a very distinctive part of him as a character, so I understand it needs to be a part of the narrative. But MacKay did this thing where, because of what happened, the name of the event escapes me, but there was an event a year or two back where like Khonshu tried to like take over the Pantheon and take over the world, and Moon Knight was sort of his spear and bad guy, and anyway, the conceit of this run is that there is a psychiatrist who is like a psychiatrist. She's like a Doc Samson. She's like a psychiatrist for heroes, and the Avengers have made Spector see her, because of how he broke bad the couple years before. So the the structure of all of the issues is basically him like talking to her on the couch, and at different points in time, and she's a recurrent character both in that vein, and also just she becomes more of like an ongoing character beyond that, but kind of like a Dr. Melfi situation. But so and that's all fine and done. Like, it was a smart decision. I understand why he did it, but like I felt reading as much as I did at once that like it was a lot of talk about dudes' personalities and like fighting them off and like keeping them in check, and how Khonshu, and like every issue had to mention that like he still serves Khonshu even though he doesn't really trust him anymore because of what he did. Like so I felt like there was a lot of like old school 70s style repetitive kind of like like stuff that that in modern comics often don't do anymore, where you just they kind of had to they felt like he very often reset the bar of letting all the sort of status quo, and I was like, all right, I don't need you to tell me 15 issues in a row that dude's got multiple personalities and these on the house with Khonshu. Like, I get it, but anyway, it's a nit though, because again, if you're reading it monthly, you probably don't even notice, right? Like it's much more of a symptom of the way I read it, I think, than a criticism of that, because I think if you took any superhero books and read 35 issues of it in a day or two, you'd probably feel similarly. And then the other nit is just that I didn't feel like the stakes were all that high, and then that's okay. Like, it doesn't have, but I didn't really feel like there was any particularly like consequential undercurrent in the book where I was like, oh man, how's he, like, this is end of the world stuff, how's he going to get out of it? And honestly, I mean, to an extent, the answer to that is that he was laying the groundwork for much of what happened with Blood Hunt.
Okay.
Much of that happens in the Moon Knight book. And so I did enjoy that component of it because I am enjoying Blood Hunt. But it was, so yeah, like I said, I can see why people that like the character like this run. It's a really well executed superhero run. Is it something you need to read? Is it something that's going to be remembered a decade from now or 2 decades from now? Probably not. But is it one of the better books that Marvel's been putting out the last few years? Yeah, I'd say that's probably true. Like, I think it's there's really nothing. There was nothing about it visually or narratively that I would say like was frustrating or that turned me off. I didn't grow tired of it like I did with, say, like Zdarsky's Daredevil run. I loved the beginning of Zdarsky's Daredevil run, and then I thought it was, really fell off. I think that's true of lots of longer runs, but this was solid throughout, and I would actually recommend it in the sense that if you get a hankering for Moon Knight, it's definitely a run that I think portrays the character in a interesting light.
Well, if it helps ease the pain from that Charlie Houston run, then I might give it a shot.
For sure.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I've always. It's a character that's easy to mock, but it's. When you think about those early Doug Munch issues, or when Sienkiewicz was doing his Neil Adams phase, and those direct market bi-monthly issues were some of the best, and Marvel was just on fire in the 80s when those issues were coming out, and they were tackling some heavy-ish stories for superhero comics, as far as Women of the Night, and just it was a little bit more, it skewed a bit more mature, and the character, whether it was Lockley or Grant, or it I think Munch had a real good handle on the character, and I liked those issues, but then it was almost like Punisher Max before there was a Max, and then we had Mark Spector Moon Knight, or the Fist of Khonshu, and that was more superhero-y stuff. Yes. So now that was more like Frank and the 616. So that's when and it's like it's a character where it works in certain settings. Like you're not going to drop Moon Knight off at Palm Springs. It doesn't really. So it has to be.
Although he was a West Coast Avenger.
Yes, he was, which was odd. Yeah, and I mean, you've got the Shroud. You don't need Moon Knight. So, I mean, like I said, it's a character I can definitely appreciate, but but it's also a character that is kind of easy to make fun of.
It is easy to make fun of, but I will say I do think like it is very lazy when people say he's just Marvel's Batman, because he's a very different character than Batman. If nothing else, that Batman, I think to his detriment, doesn't ever kill. And Moon Knight has. I mean, the backstory, of course, is that he was a for-hire assassin mercenary and has killed and done horrible shit for a long period of his life, which is why he's rich now, because he made all that money doing that. So and obviously the DID is very different, right? I mean, having legitimate manifesting personalities. I mean, Marvel seems to embrace that a little bit more than DC, right? You got Legion, you got Mark, but
yeah.
I guess DC's got the homegirl from Doom Patrol, and I guess they have him too. But yeah. So like I think the character can be cool. But yeah, for some reason it is kind of like a laughingstock character in some people's eyes. I'm not quite sure why, and I guess we're guilty of that sometimes. But just kind of like. Just because it's funny, but it's not like I think the character can be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely low hanging fruit, and there are. I mean, you should be able to grow on that. But even the there was the Round Robin stuff where there was the Amazing Spider-Man bi-weekly event, and that included Punisher and Moon Knight, and Moon Knight had a sidekick for a minute, and it was basically the sidekick's revenge, which also played into Houston's run, so they tapped into that for a backstory, and it's a rich enough character where you can go back and pull a few threads and make some stories really, really work. And I'm glad to see that MacKay had the ability and the time to devote to kind of fleshing out the character and making fans remember what the character can be and can do, and I think Hunter's Moon is not that I know much about the character, but their part in Blood Hunt has been interesting. I'm gonna say it's a highlight, but I'm glad the character is there, and the character, there's enough there where it's giving me interest to want to check out more of the character, which I guess events tend to do. But
yep, and I'm going to actually continue with reading this chunk of Vengeance of the Moon Knight, which is to be clear, Jed and Capuccio are continuing on with the story. It's even though I read 1 through 35, they are now doing Vengeance of the Moon Knight, and I think we've had up to issue 9 solicited, I think.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. Haven't read it yet, but I'm going to jump in and read that since I'm kind of on the train now.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
We can also. I read it yesterday. The second issue of the Ultimates, which was way weirder than the first for some reason.
This is. I'm out. I'm not.
Yeah, I think I am too. I really enjoyed the first one, and then I read the second. And I'm like, did I miss an issue? Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the hell happened between the end of the first issue and them attacking the White House with the second. I'm like, I don't. All right, I don't. I'm going to go back to Ultimate Black Panther, but I don't know if I don't even know if that's going to really kind of keep me in on the imprint. But yeah, second issue was a bit of a letdown after the first.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on for Geary's art. There's like these weird like pastiche like real images kind of like that are rendered in like with the nuclear cloud and like Iwo Jima. Like it's like clip art that he then like doesn't like an effect over, but then he draw. I mean, obviously, but he's not a photo ref guy generally. So yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I'm not. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good. Yeah,
I'm with you there.
I'm good. I'm good on that. You know,
done in two.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's fine.
It is.
They can't all be bangers.
I know. Yeah, listen, and Lord knows we've got plenty of other things to read.
I read a book that it's funny, like, I'm thinking, like, should I tell Tap to read this? Should I not tell Tap to read this? I mean, I think you should read it, but there's
I think I know where we're going. Okay.
There's going to be moments where you're going to be like, this motherfucker. I'm talking about Man's Best.
Mm-hmm.
5-issue miniseries, just wrapped up.
Okay.
Written by Pornsak Pichetshote. I think it's Pornsak Pichetshote, right? I always get his name wrong, and I apologize. I should have. But with art by my boo Jesse Lonergan, right? Like that's the draw.
That's right. Yes.
It's a science fiction story, so I got you there. It is a pet-centric science fiction story, so you should be right. It's right up your alley. Can I tell you definitively, though, that no pets are harmed in the making of this miniseries? I cannot.
Are they treated better than we three?
Much better.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it, but
right.
None of the harm that may or may not befall any of the characters is of the John Wick variety, if you know what I'm saying.
I do. Okay.
So the premise is it's a pretty cool premise, though, I must say. We're introduced in the first issue, like the opening pages are, you've got a cat named Athos, like a white, probably like a Siamese, like a long-haired cat. Either a yellow lab, I don't know if it's yellow lab or golden, but a old dog named Porthos, a female, and it's like I said, it's future sci-fi. So they're on a spaceship, and she's wearing she's missing a leg, but she has like a prosthetic, kind of like it's like We Three visually, but it's not like. But she has a robotic leg, and then Lovey, who is it's like I guess he's kind of like a puggish type of a dog. And we're introduced to them. They're in battle suits, and they're fighting this gigantic robot. But it ends up being like a danger room thing, meant just to entertain them, because they're on the spaceship, and it's like their fun time. They're like playtime that their owner, they call Doc, this woman who's the doc, like that she puts them through, and they are on the ship because they are her support dogs, or her support animals. And the premise is they're on the ship, and they are looking for a new home for humanity, because humanity is destroying our planet Earth through war and environmental destruction and all that, and they're trying to find a new home. And it's a group of people on this ship trying to find a new home, and on their way to where they're trying to see if it's the planet that they're trying to see whether it's habitable. Shit happens, pretty classic sci-fi setting, and the ship crashes on a planet that they weren't planning on being on, and everybody gets dispersed. And our heroes, Athos, Porthos, and Lovey, are immediately then on a quest to find and save Doc and anyone else they can. And that's the premise of the miniseries at first. But where it gets interesting is that they were like faux heroes, like I said, in this danger room in the book, just kind of like to entertain them. But then now they're faced with a situation where they kind of have to be actual heroes. And the strength of the book is the way that that Pornsak gets us to love these characters and gives them life. I mean, these three are like siblings more than friends, in that they piss each other off. They don't listen to each other, but they do care about each other, and they are in it with each other for full go. But for example, Porthos never listens. Athos is supposed to be the leader, but Porthos never listens to Athos, and then Lovey gets fucking pissed because Lovey's like to Athos, dude, like it's your fault too, because you don't ever clamp down on Porthos when Porthos doesn't listen to you, and then you don't berate her, you don't tell her that she was wrong. And like, so there's that dynamic going on, and that almost gets them in a lot of hot water at times. There's a point where Athos is like really mad at Porthos and says, and you're just a bad dog, and they bold it because you know how they're like, and Porthos is like, do you mean it? And then Athos is in her head like, I don't really mean it, but then she's like, I do. And then Porthos' ears go back, and like, it's like so if you have pets, like, you really appreciate the little nuances of the dynamic of the relationships. But I just thought it was super fun. I mean, Lonergan is obviously great at drawing these kinds of like wildscapes and also giving very expressive life to characters. So that he's a perfect pairing visually for it, and it's a lovely story. It actually gets pretty mind bendy and pretty very like it goes in much more exploratory and conceptual ways than I expected, in terms of like how we would define life and existence, and how different species or groups of beings can exist on the same plane. Like, there's definitely like a lot of higher concept stuff as the book goes on that I wasn't expecting. but never loses sight of the fact that this is a story about the heart of these three animals who love their master even maybe when they shouldn't, ? So yeah, really well done, fun little miniseries with a ton of heart. Like I said, there are definitely parts that are by design meant to leave you with your jaw on the floor and your heart broken, but all I can say is rest assured that like Pornsak and Jesse do us right at the end. They don't break our hearts. So the journey may be rocky at times, but the ending is enchanting.
Okay, that's good to know.
You won't be mad at me if you read it.
Okay,
but there'll be pages where you'd be like, you might be mad at me.
Some bitch.
But then if you make it through the whole thing, you'll be like, oh, okay, cool.
Okay, because I know that there's the other one by I think Tom King and I think Pete Woods. Was it Animal Pound?
Yeah,
I think it's like a take on. It might be a take on Animal Farm. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
just at a shelter, but yeah, there's some things that just. Okay, so are there? This is one of the questions. Is there a topic that's verboten for you?
Oh, in terms of like my entertainment?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, No, I certainly there was a time. I mean, my kids are getting older now, as you know. There was a time when, like, I found like Kids in Peril to be tougher to watch. Particularly when they were very young and
like Pet Sematary.
Well, like I'm having trouble thinking of it, but I know there were like I was definitely more sensitive to the idea of like kids being ill or in danger. But that was more when I was first becoming a dad, and like your kids are little and they just seem completely like at the mercy of everything on the planet but you, and your job is to protect them. You get this like overwhelming feeling of like you got to protect them, and like I said, I mean, as you know, Holden's my youngest and he's 15. So it's different now. So I don't really think that hits me in the same way it used to, at least for a few years. But I mean, the only thing is there are times when you're watching something, probably more often like a dramatic TV series or something, or a film where like when there's really graphic violence towards women, it's pretty hard to handle. Like where they show it, and again, these are few and far between. I mean, but like fortunately, but I mean, there's only instances where like you see like a woman getting like physically beaten up or something graphically shown in whatever you're watching, and it's like that's tough. That takes me pretty hardly out of it, and I sometimes have trouble getting back into it and just sort of like jumping back into the narrative. But again, like those, I can't think of. It's not. I don't think that's something that's happened very often. So I would say I don't think there's really anything that's verboten to me. Like I don't have the peccadillos like you have. I mean, I guess the only one that I do have a bit is I don't generally like, and this isn't verboten, I just don't generally find slackers very appealing. Sure, yeah. I mean, it's not a 100% thing. I mean, movies like Dazed and Confused, like all-time favorites, but obviously, especially with comics and stories, like I'm going to have trouble rooting for a total like loser who doesn't have any interest in bettering their life. But I mean, like for you, like I know it's that with like precocious kids and teens, you that turns you off, and obviously but I know animal violence is verboten for you. But like, is there anything other than animal violence that is just a no-go for you?
I don't think so. I tend to, and even like, I mean, the biggest example that I tend to point to, especially if it serves a purpose to the story, and obviously we didn't have much of an attachment because it was off screen, the opening scene for House of Cards, where Frank puts the dog out of its misery. You hear the car hit the animal, you hear the animal whine, but it was all designed to introduce you to this character. So that wasn't a turn off. But like, if I were to watch I Am Legend, I know exactly where to pause it and walk away. Yeah. so there are some things where I kind of I understand why it happens. The same thing with American Psycho. Like, I understand why it happens. I don't need to see it. I don't. That scene turns me off from the entire movie. So I get it, and I'm not. I don't take offense or feel any sort of way by anybody who just is unfazed and sits through scenes like that. But yeah, for me, there's just I guess it is. It's just the way I'm wired. But yeah, kids or maybe the elderly in certain instances.
Oh, you could make, if you made a whole movie of elderly people getting torn to shreds, I'd be into it.
It depends on, like, if it was Grandpa Charlie, sure, yeah, no, he can go to vat of acid. I don't give a shit, but it might just depend on the situation. Sure. But no, yeah, pretty much anything else, you could pretty much kick the crap out of any other character on TV these days. But yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm sure I know why it is, but yeah, it's pretty much just the pets or the whole defenseless animal kind of thing. But no, but if as long as it's not just for shock value or because the writer is gets off on hurting people and the readers, if it's there for a reason, then maybe I'm growing, but no, it's not as an instant turnoff as it used to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've had some conversations with Vince over the years where, you know, obviously there's literally nothing that he finds like the heat. I mean, like, and I didn't mention it when you asked because it's like, I don't know that if you've ever been confronted with it, but like some of the stuff that, you know, I think it's more common in, like, at least when we've had the conversations, it's more common in manga, right? Like some of the stuff about, like, you know, like some of that, like, you know, really verboten stuff that just, you know, like with kids and stuff, like, like where it's like, you know, Vince is obviously, and I understand his perspective, like art is art, right? Yeah. Like I think I generally am a fan of transgressive entertainment, but that's if I were confronted with it, it would be verboten. Like if I would hope that I would avoid. I have thus far done a good job of avoiding any stories that have any of that stuff in it. You know, before I even am confronted with it. But if I were to, like, you know, again, just pick up like a manga or something that was highly recommended, not knowing that it was in there and that was in there, like that would be a major. I would just put the book down and be like, why did you tell me to read this? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, because that's like, I mean, and again, I'm not saying Vince or other people's perspective, like art is art. Like I totally get the perspective, but you know, you're gonna, you know, I'm not. My brain just crashes on that. I can't see it as art. Then I'm like, that's just offensive stuff I can't deal with. So
yeah, I get that. Okay.
Yeah. My last question for you, friend, is, you know, I know your sort of life journey in terms of like how you ended up at your college and doing what you do now, and you know, we're not too far away from you and Renee retiring. But I realized I don't know that I have ever, or if we ever did talk, I don't remember what did young Dap want to do when he grew up? Like, what was, like, when you were, you know, a youngster, like, did you have a career or careers in mind, like, that you thought you might want to do? And you know, I don't even know if there ever was, like, if you had a path. And you can't say comic anchor because I know you wanted to be a comic anchor, but like, was there ever like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be a cop, or I'm going to be like, was there ever a part of your life where you thought you were going to like do a particular thing?
For a brief period, I was really, baseball might have been it. I enjoyed playing Little League. I enjoyed, I didn't play in high school, but I did like playing baseball. And that's as far as sports went, and that evaporated at a, before I was a teenager. But yeah, no, after that, I kind of once I kind of got involved with computers, there were things there that I thought I could have a future with, or at least dabble with and make a hobby out of. I always enjoyed, and I even had, surprisingly, a few teachers comment on it. But I thought maybe if I just never sat down to devote or really hone any sort of skill like that. But I was told I was a pretty decent writer when in school. So there was a moment there where maybe that was it. And I would write some stories, and a lot of the stories I would write kind of had an open ending, or at least end with kind of an ellipsis. You don't know where it's going, and sometimes the teachers were a little miffed because they wanted to know where the hell the story was going. So I thought that was neat. But once we brought that first computer home, and I was just kind of enamored with it, I had no idea where it would take me. And then there were a bunch of years where I worked retail, primarily. Once I got away from the supermarkets and the deli counters, it was either electronics or
coconuts, right?
There was coconuts, so I was selling the music in the movies. Alternated between Lion King and Aladdin on my opening shifts. But I mean, I worked at Sharper Image. I worked at Staples right when Windows 95 was coming out, so they were kind of expanding their computer section. There's Computer City and Comp USA, and so electronics and tech was kind of always part of my life from my teenage years on. And then I just lucked ass backwards into the position I'm in now. But no, there was never really aside from when I sent out those samples, and I thought maybe I could fool around with that idea. Not that I wasn't listless or had no path. There just wasn't anything that really just struck a chord that, like, this is it. This is what I'm definitely doing this for the rest of my life.
Now, you are going to be still young. You're going to be in your 50s when you can retire from the university and get your pension. So I assume you're going to, like, do some other kind of job, like, at least potentially, like, you're not averse to it. Like, do you
oh yeah, no, I
do you envision like doing like some kind of techie thing again, or do you think, like, would you envision, like, I don't know, like working at a restaurant or a bakery, like different passion, like mixing drinks, being a barkeep? I mean, no, I don't know, like something that's more like in line with the stuff that you love.
Yes to both. I've started taking some online courses. There's an online school, Zero to Mastery, and they're all about coding and programming and HTML and things like that. So I've been fooling around with that every so often, a couple times a week, and so I if something like that becomes available where I can do things from home without having to go to an office, that's definitely an idea. If we're still here in this immediate area, then yes, I would absolutely love to see if any of the kitchens, any of the restaurants here need part-time help, or just something where I could have fun doing what I enjoy doing. Getting paid for it would be great, but if I could actually get some. I mean, obviously, I'm well past the point of, when you're in your 20s, that's when you're supposed to go around to different kitchens and learn from the best, and right. So so this way, when you're in your late 30s, that's when you're ready to actually you're established because you have all that experience. But no, I would just be able to get some of that real world hustle and bustle, seeing what it's like when the house is packed and the fryers and the ranges are going. I'd like to see how I would do in that environment. Yes, of course, obviously, I'd be older. I'd be near 60, but I mean, I'd still like to, and absolutely no preconceived notions where I think I could, run with the young bucks, but I want to see how well I could do without screwing up the entire service for everybody and making a mess out of someone's meal. But I would like to see how far I could, if I could handle it, how far I could run, and how well I could run with the people who do it every day and made a career out of it. I would like to, and I'm saying all this and it sounds like I'm kind of like downplaying what they do, but I want to just see how the other half lives. Just want to see what that environment is like, in where you do have things should be done by a certain time, and I'm not just sitting in my kitchen cooking whenever while I'm also flipping through news feeds and shit like that. So yeah, I would definitely like to do that. And there are a few places here that probably would have an option to have those opportunities available to people. But yeah, and that's the other thing. Like I also wouldn't, at that stage of my life, I wouldn't want to. I'd feel guilty. I wouldn't want to take a job from somebody who is young and hungry and actually needs it more than I do. I'm not trying to take something from anybody, but if an opportunity would arise, then yeah, I'd like to take a stab at it.
Nice.
What about you? I know we always joke around about the marine biologist, but I mean, when it is time for you to finally pack up that shingle, what would you like to do?
I'm done. I'm good. I'm done. I'm not
okay.
No, I have no interest in. When I retire, I plan on being like never working again, retired. But no. So I mean, there'll be things I do. I mean, I'll probably always be an angel investor and happy to help. As an advisor, for startups that interest me. But I don't. I do not plan on having. I don't plan on working at Publix in Florida when I'm.
I don't want to be a greeter.
No. It is not. It's something went amiss with my plan if that's the case. So.
Well then, okay. So, is once all the boys are out, and I know we've discussed this, especially with Cliff and Justin, but you guys already have the place down in Florida. Do you see that as being a destination, or you guys? Okay.
No, I mean, no, no. First of all, I would never want to retire to Florida. Secondly, I mean, it is, it's Beth's parents' house, and it's our house. But I'm saying it was her parents' house, and and she and her brother Jim share it jointly, and he lives there for most of the time. So I think no. I mean, I think I don't think we'll ever sell that house because of what it means to them. Mm-hmm. It's like their last sort of connection to their parents, and I get that. And it's nice, and it's a great location. I mean, especially if we want to go do things in Florida. But no, I don't think I could never imagine living there. And it's a fine. It's a fine house to visit, but I don't know if aesthetically it's what I would want to live in full time if it was my retirement home. No, we'll figure that out. Like I really have no clue where we're going to retire to, man. Like I know it won't be Jersey because the cost of living here is crazy, but
sure.
But it really will depend on what the kids are doing. Like I mean, as we sit here right now, it seems like the most likely outcome is Jackson stays in Boston, Collins stays in DC, and we'll have to see where Holden ends up because he's not in college yet. But and if that's the case, then I think Beth would probably want to be close enough to the Northeast. So I'm thinking that would kind of limit us to like North Carolina and up,
mm-hmm.
Be my guess. But again, like if Jackson's up in, Cali and Holden's in Chicago and, Collins in DC, like, well, then the world's literally our oyster, and she's probably much more open to, listen, happy wife, happy life, dude. Like,
yes.
As long as Beth doesn't want to retire to Florida, like, I'm good. Like, well, I was gonna say, or like Mississippi or something, but like she doesn't. I don't think Beth's ever set foot in Mississippi. I don't think I don't think that's going to be on the short list, but my point is that ideally I would love to retire somewhere where there's seasons.
Yeah.
I've grown up as a winter baby. I love the seasons, change the seasons. So I would love to be not south enough that we lose that. But I'm open, man. Like, I need a blue state, or at least a blue area.
Yes.
Let me correct it, because actually, like some states like North Carolina, they aren't blue. I need a blue area, right? Like like a suburb of a city, or just a generally blue state. I need a reasonably good cost of living. Obviously cheaper than what I have now in terms of like that. I need a place that's obviously safe, and then the other thing is it's pivotal that we live somewhere that's very easy to travel from. That has a multiple airports that are large enough that we could fly anywhere, ideally direct, that we want. So like that's kind of, beyond that, man, I'm pretty chill, dude. I don't really need, like, I envision having a much smaller place. Like, the idea of purging 90% of the things I spend money on now is like very exciting to me. Yes. Even though I can't stop buying the things now, but the idea mentally of like making that like flip that switch is exciting. The big question is whether we'll have pets. I mean, we're such pet people, and I mean, Beth's so connected with our dogs. We have 3 big dogs, but she swears that once they all pass away, that like we're not going to have any more dogs, so that we have more freedom to travel and not be encumbered. So we'll see. Like, I don't know, man. Like I'm open to that too. I'd love to have. I have trouble believing she'll actually be able to live decades of her life without a dog, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So
yeah, same.
Yeah. No, you guys are at least starting to noodle. You're starting to noodle, but not seriously yet. You haven't like seriously put effort into figuring out where you want to live.
I mean, there's the past couple of months. She's even been. I don't know how. If she's been looking deeply, she hasn't been sharing her findings with me. But there have been times over the past few months prior to Sunday that we were. She's thrown out the idea of leaving the country, come the end of the year, the way things go. But or at least look towards it based on how things go at the end of the year. But yeah, I don't. I know. Yeah, I do like. I do like the seasons. We're close to pretty much owning this place. Without she's amazing when it comes to mortgage payments and paying more and towards the principal and everything. So I mean, that's whether or not we're still here with this place, or if we rent it or Airbnb it or whatever, giving us the ability to go somewhere else. But yeah, also, which is why we've never really, in all the times we've been together, all the years we've been together, we haven't vacationed really anywhere together, and that's primarily because of the pets. So like Beth, when Anouk passed, we were pretty good until we went into the PetSmart one day and Renee saw Onyx, and that was pretty much it. So it was that wasn't the plan, because I thought, hey, we were going to have some time to do stuff, but and Onyx is small enough where we kind of still can, but then we still have to worry about Rocket. So I mean we're pretty much, we're in decent shape, so it's not like we're worried about being old and immobile, but we are still not getting any younger. So yeah, it's we'll definitely see. I mean, she can pretty much. I mean, she can definitely retire before me. She started at the school the year before I did. So, and she'll have the age before I do. So, her pension could cover the mortgage and her car note, with still money left over for things. So it's not a. And she's even said if they decide to get rid of the hybrid schedule, then that is a very that's a very real possibility for us to seriously consider retiring early. So yeah, I mean, it's nice that we have the options, but we'll see where things go, and like I said, things got a little bit brighter after this weekend, so it's not as doom and gloomy as it was. But
dude, the second that Biden stepped away, I like minutes later I pinged my chief compliance officer and I was like, remind me on the what are the limits for donating to a presidential campaign? I sent Harris for president a hefty e-payment.
Yeah. Renee did that night, Sunday evening, and then I think I did during my lunch break on Monday. But yeah, no. So it's listen. It is a it's weird. I can't believe where we were and the way people are, but it's a nice segue to my final question, which is one of those which can kind of pre in your travels put us in a different mindset. If you could live in any fictional town or city or world, where would it be?
It's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I guess it would be somewhere. I guess it would be somewhere in the future, just to see if the future is what we think it's going to be, because I'm sure it's going to be so different. I don't know that I have like a. It's not like I can't. I'm not going to be like, oh, Tatooine, or like. It's not like I have like any I don't have any specific place. I've always thought it'd be like cool. I mean, again, it's like. I love the idea sometimes of like being in the Old West, but the real talk is it would have been sucked. It would have sucked to live in the Old West, right? I mean, like, you're shitting in a hole, everyone's getting sick, you're dying at 35, you get
bumping the wrong guy. He's got a 6-gun on him.
Floors in your house, like
yes,
it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Like, it's romantic because of the stories that I've been told of those eras, but I wouldn't really want to live that way. So I would say the future, man. Like, I mean, I've always had this weird thing where in a perfect world, like where I was like, Bezos rich, I always thought like, what would life be like? And I always pictured, like, when I clear my mind, that I would own a all glass, like, modern home right on the ocean. But ooh. I always laugh at myself because I'm like, I fucking hate the beach. So I'm one of those people that would want a sick beach house as like my forever home, that I never set foot on the beach itself. Like, that's what I would want. Like, I'd have a great infinity pool that overlooks the ocean, and I'd be in that all the time, and then like everyone else could be on the beach. But anyway, that's like a dream. That's like mentally, like, in a perfect world, if I had unlimited funds, I would buy a beautiful private beachfront, and have an incredible dream home built. Like, that would be ideal. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I don't know, man. Like, somewhere that's like in the future enough where I can see all of the things in my mind I think are going to happen, and if they did happen, but like, I wouldn't want it to be the post-apocalyptic future, which I think is most likely. So I don't want it to be like a safe version of that world. I don't know. But yeah, there's not like, I've never wanted to like live in Hobbiton or like fucking the Shire or fucking like Amityville. Like, and I've never really put myself in the stories that way. Like, I don't know. How about you?
My initial answer is because obviously reading comics, Marvel's pretty much in the real world, so we're already living in New York. I'm not worried about that. But whether it was, between the two, I'd rather be Metropolis over Gotham any day.
You're such a mark. You're such a cape mark.
I'm such a fucking mark. But since you threw the
sea flying overhead.
Not just that, no, it's the city of tomorrow. No, man, those buildings, the architecture, and just, I mean, LexCorp's right there with all that scientific advancements. You got Star, but no, it would. I love the aspect, since you mentioned the future. That United Federation of Planets era, San Francisco. I like it's another reason why I am such a mark for Trek, because it is that it's unlike every other futuristic story where it is more of a utopia, where it's not such a, you'd hate it because it's not such a capitalistic world, and it's not a and there's empathy, and the technology is there, and just it's an envisionable future. It's just not necessary because of the way we are, the way mankind is. It's not necessarily an attainable one, but it's the future I think we should aspire for, or aspire to. But yeah, I just I want to, wherever I will be happy and around like-minded, caring people, I'll be good.
Big facts. Nice.
All right, so this was episode 940. What the hell do we have for your travels? What do I have left? There was I got caught up on World Tree. And
it's getting good. It had a lull. It had a lull, but
it did.
It had a lull.
You're not wrong.
But it's getting real good now. I'm like, okay.
And
now I'm pretty into it now.
That reveal
in
the recent issue that threw me for a loop, because I wasn't expecting it, because of the way that character was introduced. Was a real neat twist. I don't know the way it felt, and I haven't checked the solicits, so I don't know if this is just like I don't think it's a 12-issue story. Because I don't think they can wrap this up. If it is meant to be, I don't think they can wrap it up in one more issue. But where it's going just completely sort of revitalized it for me a little bit. But it's I mean, World Tree, written of course by James Deneen IV, art by Fernando Blanco, colors by Jordi Belair. It's the crap that Silk is going through now, and just anybody. There's a real cool Inception scene, but yeah, it's crazy, and I mean it almost pretty funky, since we were talking about Cell earlier, but it's the backstory with the siblings, and I mean, we knew about the names pretty much from the jump when everybody was introduced, but the parents being the sci-fi fanatics and naming their kids what they named them, it could have been, these 11 issues could have been way messier than the way James is telling this story. It could have been pretty messy, but it like you said, there was a little bit of a rough spot between 1 and 11, but it's the ship seems to be riding right now, and I've kind of a renewed kind of enjoyment of the series. Not that I was still digging it. It wasn't the top of the stack that it was when it originally came out. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to where the story is going from here. But yeah, if you haven't yet, and I don't even know if they collected the first half dozen issues. If they have, great. Check it out. Okay, good. Mm-hmm. So get on the collections of World Tree. Otherwise, get those singles and catch up. We've had 11 issues so far. But in your travels, World Tree, for Tiny Onion and Image Comics.
Nice. Before I give my inner travels, just a shout out to our good friend Sanford Greens.
Thank you.
I almost said Kickstarter. It's not a Kickstarter. It's a crowdsourced event through Zoop. Our friends at Zoop. So you go to Zoop ZOOP.GG. It's a Kickstarter competitor, but we have Sanford Greens 1000, which some of you may remember. Sanford and his two partners created a was originally a web comic, and I believe it was actually originally a pitch for a animated series, because that's actually where Sanford had spent a lot of his earlier part of his career doing animation work, and but nevertheless, it was a web series that won the Ringo Award for Best Web Comic back in 2018, called 1000, and it follows a character named Dragon's Son, a supreme entity who's abandoned all creation as he struggles to return to his true dragon form by completing 1,000 acts of repentance. So basically, Dragon does a lot of wrong things. The powers that be turn him into a human and say you got to do 1,000 good acts to get back to being your dragon self. And so they are collecting it in a beautiful, like a couple different versions. You can get the digital, you can get the soft cover, and then you can get a slipcased hardcover of the series. So lots of options for whatever kind of collector you are, and it is currently 15 days left, so you have plenty of time to jump in and join in the party. So in your travels, it's fun. Like, I was looking through previews last month, and I came across a solicit for Adventuregame Comics Volume 3 by Jason Shiga. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this? Because I'm a big Jason Shiga fan. He does some pretty unique stuff. Probably the most recent thing we talked about, which is many years ago, was called Meanwhile. It was basically a choose-your-own-adventure comic where he didn't just play with it, go to page A to go from page 1 to page 10. It was drawn in the book graphic novel was drawn in a maze. So as you follow the adventure maze, like you could maybe go up through the top of a page and then go down into another page. It was very, very creative in terms of its graphical layout. And so I've always been a fan of Shiga because of the way that he treats the design of the book as much as a part of the storytelling narrative as the line work or the script. And so I saw this solicit for Adventuregame Comics Volume 3, and I thought, wait a minute, Volume 3? I don't remember Volumes 1 and 2. But fortunately, they were also resoliciting Volumes 1 and 2. So I ordered all 3, read the first one, which was Adventuregame Comics Leviathan, little square-bound hardcover, and it's a blast. It is exactly what I just described. It is a choose-your-own-adventure book. In this case, Leviathan is about a classic fantasy adventure setup where our heroine is put on a quest, and she has got to go on this grand quest and find allies along the way. And this book is, it takes you on that journey, and based on the decisions you make, my understanding is there are over 50 different ways the book can end, and that's pretty freaking cool. So I read it. I got, I think, 4 or 5 different significant endings based on my choices. I kind of jumped around and made some different choices here or there just to see. Super fun. Obviously, the rereadability factor of this is off the charts, and it's an all ages book too, so it's great for everybody. And like I said, I ordered the other volumes as well, and I believe there's more to come. So it's Adventuregame Comics generally, and this first volume is called Leviathan.
Excellent. Yeah, I saw that solicited. I was like, yeah, I need to check this out.
Isn't it ridiculous that we spend as much time paying attention to comics as we do? And I do, every month I do a detailed write-up of previews and Connect and Marvel previews for our patrons about what I'm ordering. I go through with what I feel like is a fine-tooth comb, and then every damn month there's awesomeness that you just don't even remember seeing.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
It is. It's crazy. And it's a great problem to have, but still, it's annoying because you go through all that, and there's still, I can't remember. I mean, obviously, I'm not buying as many singles as I used to, and a bit more particular with my collections. But there were a lot of months where I'd place my order, and then realize a couple days later that I after going through it or seeing what someone else had ordered or someone brought up, I'm like, well, I didn't see that, and I pretty much went through it with a fine-tooth comb. So yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but at least as long as everything's still out there, then that's not the end of the world.
Facts.
All right, boys and girls, thank you for listening to this. Hopefully not a train wreck. We will...
we were on point. We held it down.
I think so.
We held it down.
We'll continue this next week. Same amount of fun, and maybe with someone else. We'll see. But other than that, enjoy your comics. Thank you tons for listening. Check us out wherever. You're already listening to this. Tell your friends to check us out wherever they get their podcast. Leave us a review wherever you do listen to your podcast. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/11o'clock.comics, 11 o'clock comics. You got our website. You find us on iTunes, on Spotify. You can drop us a note through the website. Other than that, if you sign up on the Patreon, you can join the Slack, as well as get the bonus content. But checking out the Slack tier gets you in on some of those inside jokes, inside baseball conversations that we comment on often during the podcast, as we mentioned today with Anthony's SDCC post. We all have a blast there. It's great fun. We've got the Facebook group, and you know where to find us. So that is it for this week. We appreciate you taking time with us. We will be back next week. So Vince doesn't have the music queued up, so I am just going to say good night, David.
Bump. It's my background music.
And we out.
That's it for that one.